We are now on ETF watch, 24 hours away, maybe, for what could be the biggest moment in crypto around Bitcoin and the ETFs that are starting to hit the market. I'll break it all down for you today. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to the Tech Path. All right, so let's get started today. I want to thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem. If you guys are going into self-custody, this is one of the best ways to do it with a self-custody wallet that works in tandem with your app. And the cool thing is that this is one of the best, I think, technologies out there to use in terms of self-custody. Just go and check it out. Hit the Get Tangem section right there. That's going to bring you to a 3-card set. Make sure and order that because that's going to be the best way for you to have the backups that you need for self-custody and the solutions that are out there. Pretty much any type of token you want to hold is available right there on that wallet. Use our code down below for some additional discount. All right, a couple of things I want to get to. And of course, always Mr. Jim Cramer has to lead the week with it. And this came in, I think Bitcoin is now topping out. This, of course, coming in on January 8th, just yesterday. And I think that is the perfect signal for Bitcoin to continue ripping. Because, you know, Cramer's just that. Just do the opposite and you'll be fine. But the fact that he's even talking about crypto right now is pretty amazing because he had pretty much written it off. So he's already kind of retraced his whole position. Here's James Seyffert talking about how things stand in the Bitcoin ETF fee war, which is a really big part of this. Expecting approval orders tomorrow, potential launches on Thursday morning, meaning we're going to get to trade on Thursday morning. For a lot of you who are maybe watching this right now and you're brand new to crypto and you're saying, this is exactly what I want to do. I don't want to get in, have to create a Coinbase account, have to go do a wallet, do self-custody, all that kind of stuff that I've heard about, you know, from my kids or my friends. I'm going to go this route, and here's what you need to be considering, and that is all these fees. If you look at some of the things within the chart, you can kind of see the 6 months or 1 billion currently on Bitwise, around 0.2%, 0.25 on ARK, 21 shares. And then, of course, there's Invesco Galaxy at 0.39, 0.30 on iShares with BlackRock. So going to get competitive out there within the market. I think we're going to continue to see more rate movements within the fees around this. And I think why this factors in is because of the amount of investment advisors that are now going to start to go in this direction ahead. I want to go to some clips here that will start to give you kind of a framework of what's happening in the market. Let's go to our first clip real quick.
There are 13 applicants for Bitcoin ETFs. First in line, Cathie Wood from ARK Invest. She joins us now along with VanEck, CEO of VanEck, who also has an application for a spot Bitcoin ETF.
Now, can we be 100% sure there will be approval this week? No, you never say 100%, but we're feeling really good about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't look at it as a second piece, but there's two components. One component is we want the ETF itself to become approved, and that's your S1 filing. That'll make the product itself viable and approved by the SEC. The other side is, look, this is an ETF that's innovative and unique. It's never traded here at the New York Stock Exchange, which means we do not yet have a series of listing rules to trade it. That's your 19B4 filing. So we're filing a set of rules that say for spot Bitcoin ETFs, here's how they trade. Now, we already have rules for futures-based futures-based Bitcoin ETFs. As you know, we have BitO that's been trading over 2 years. There's $1.7 billion in BitO, but this would be spot Bitcoin, which is a little different.
So even NYSE starting to get ready for what's going to happen later this week, most likely in terms of trading activity and what that might look like, because this is really getting to heat up where the markets are going to be coming from. And even the markets have corrected in the S&P. We'll talk a little bit about that, show you guys some charts here in a little bit. I want to go over to another clip here around sell the news, because this is kind of the mantra that people are looking at right now around playing the Bitcoin angle. Listen in.
So is this a sell on the news event or not?
I think a lot of people have been saying that it probably will be a sell on the news event, but so many people are saying that now that I'm beginning to have doubts. I think that's going to be very appealing. And if institutions with trillions of dollars under management just put 0.2 or 0.5% in, that could really move the needle. So we think the move has been anticipatory, and it makes sense. It makes sense.
No, I mean, listen, I think Cathie's right that there is a short-term positioning in front of this approval, but what people are missing is just take a step back. And you're in a great setup, I think, for investors who are going long Bitcoin.
Yeah, now Wood hit on something there that I thought was interesting, is that her point too, that there's a lot of assets under management that could be really at this day, right now, in this 24-hour period between now and tomorrow, of whether or not we get this approval, taking a real hard look at their current positions. And what that simply means is, are we in a potential day before for rebalancing a lot of portfolios and looking for that 1%, 2% or more that could flow into this? And this is one thing I want you to think about. The amount of assets under management that fall out of the major institutional capital, zones go into a lot of these private investment managers. And these private investment managers, in many ways, often help. It's kind of like the tail wagging the dog. There is a lot of indicators that typically come from that group. In fact, we've shown this on the show before, the amount of number of investment managers that are looking at Bitcoin of going forward. And I think this is going to continue to get a little bit of a snowball effect. So I'm really changing my thesis on whether or not Bitcoin will continue to hold and also start to rip after the approval. So it's going to be a very intriguing week for sure. I want to go to another clip here. This is talking about the fee wars and what this might mean.
There's a lot of interest in the fee structure here. Cathie, I'll start with you. Maybe I don't know if you published your fee structure yet, but if you can explain sort of what you're going to be charging here for this for Bitcoin ETFs.
We are not looking to maximize profitability with the spot ETF. So that's our primary motive, to charge 25 basis points. And for the first $1 billion or first 6 months, free access.
I saw it was published was 80 basis points. You refiled it with now 25 basis points. Is that right?
Yes. So originally we were just putting in there a marker. We didn't know what how the industry was going to fall out. But as we were evolving our thinking, we were saying, wait a minute, this is a special moment to make a statement. We just wanted to make sure that one of the things we communicated is we want you to feel like you can access this. So free for the first 6 months or $1 billion in AUM.
So if I'm just a retail investor, I put $10,000 in your Bitcoin ETF, there's no fee for the first 6 months, is that right?
Or until AUM hits $1 billion, whichever happens first.
Okay, fine.
I don't want to talk about the specifics of ours. What I will say, though, I agree with Cathie that really, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. We wanted to pay respect to those developers, so we're giving part of our profits that we're making off of this ETF.
But you did publish your numbers this morning, right?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's out there.
And you don't want to tell us what it is?
No, Doug's compliance people are making me really nervous.
Oh, brother, for crying out loud. But you think it will start trading on Thursday?
VanEck products are competitively priced and very well built.
You're reading like an advertisement. But you believe it's going to start trading Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so you can kind of see there's a lot happening out there on Wall Street right now, and I think for the first time they're getting a bit giddy around the idea of Bitcoin actually being an asset class for it. So I think it's going to get competitive, and I think we're going to see some surprises in the market as well. This will start to flow into some other asset trading that I think also will get some pressure, because we have to consider that. But the other aspect that will play into this is, how do people take profits on Bitcoin, and what do they do with that? Do we start to see the altcoin market start to run? I want to go to the last clip here on this one, and this is Bitwise CEO. He's talking a little bit more here than meets the eye. Listen in.
24 basis points. That is your proposed fee. Walk us through how you arrived at that number.
I think investors are going to be happy once we get to that ETF era. It's a win for investors. And the issuers, we can work with it. It's definitely a functional price point. So we're excited about it.
Now, as you know, there's also things like spreads and premium discount. We just had Reggie on. I'm not sure if you heard what he said, but he said the premium could be upwards of 8%. That seems high to me, but that could conceivably be looked at as a cost. What's your take on that?
Well, I think investors need to look at the total cost of any ETF. You and I have talked about that for years, Eric. That's the expense ratio plus the trading fee. We'll have to see where these come out to the market. I have confidence that these will be liquid markets, but it will be interesting to see where they come out, both from a spreads and a premium discount perspective. We'll have to see whenever the launch happens.
So what's your take on why Grayscale has cut its fees down to 1.5%, but is still leagues above what everyone else is doing?
It's an interesting situation. I probably shouldn't speak about a competitive product.
All right, so that was Matt Hogan, of course, from Bitwise, kind of talking about there are going to be some, I won't say hidden, but just other fees that you do have to be aware of. This in from Watch Your Guru. And this is applicant Valkyrie talks about, hey, this is going to happen on Wednesday and trading is going to happen on Thursday. So that is I think that's the real question here is how fast do we see markets actually adopt a trade and we see ETFs being traded on the open market. So there's Thursday, man, that would be very interesting for Bitcoin, I think, in terms of the chart. If you guys are not subscribed to the channel, make sure and subscribe right now. Just take a little bit of time, hit that little subscribe bell, and that way it's going to give you some notifications and possibly find us in your feed a little bit more. So, and of course, right now is really kind of the time to be watching what's happening in the crypto markets, obviously with where the markets are going, but with the ETF and also the altcoins, I think that which will start to move here in a very short period of time. So I want to go to another clip here, getting into a little bit about whether or not we will start to see more advancement on Bitcoin over the 47K. Listen in.
Have we already bought the rumor, sell the news? What's the thought?
Yeah, it's obviously a pretty big competitive milestone, right? We have quite a few different issuers with filings in.
Has it moved as much as it's going to move? Is this the day it gets announced, it moves another, 20, 30, 40? I mean, what are we talking about here?
It's hard to expect because we have to really see how the capital flows into the ETF. I think obviously an approval is bullish, but we've seen a big move recently. So the best part here is that there's going to be additional investors that get access to Bitcoin that maybe don't really want to natively hold it themselves, right? So they're going to be able to buy it.
If I told you it was going to move 15%, but I didn't tell you which way.
I don't think I'd be surprised.
And right, but pick away, up or down.
I think it depends on which way the approval, if it's approved or not approved.
Well, let's say it's approved.
If it's approved,
no. I'm saying if it's approved.
Go with approved.
If it's approved, I think it's likely we see more of an upside than a downside.
You do?
Yeah.
All right, so this coming in from the CBO, head of the CBOE, which is where most of these ETFs will be traded. So even they are looking at more of a buy the news situation rather than sell the news. So interesting times for sure. Here, of course, is Gary Gensler. If you're considering an investment involving crypto assets, be cautious. When Mr. Gensler starts doing things like this, I start paying attention. So this tells me that we are brewing into a new era in finance. And I think this is something that people need to pay attention to. Here was a little bit more in the article. We'll highlight a few things here. And it's really kind of just traditional investing, basics. And they kind of nail it down here. Cryptocurrency related investments very different than regulated market securities. For example, securities laws provide important protections that you may not get when dealing with cryptocurrency. I think most people understand that, but maybe some don't. Never make an investment decision based on celebrity endorsements. I'm pretty sure most investors are not doing that as well, even though I know there are a few people that probably do. But always do thorough independent research. As always, do your own research. These are things that we talk about every day here on the channel is don't follow the crowds, make sure and do your research, understand what you're investing in, and also just understand how to diversify. And I think that goes within crypto or any other, traditional market out there. And then don't flip a coin when you're making investment decisions. So meaning sometimes I feel like I almost have to flip a coin because you could go NVIDIA or Meta. Which one would you go with today? Well, probably NVIDIA right now. But the point is they're both up. So those are good problems to have. I want to go to another tweet here, of course, coming in from Meta Lawman. Hey, Gensler, thanks for the tip. One follow-up question. What's a crypto asset security, and where can I find the definition in a statute, or did you just make them up? Again, just asking for a few million investors. So, of course, James not one to pull punches over there. Of course, Meta Lawman, a securities attorney, been on our show many times, so he's always a great one to follow out there on Twitter. Another clip that I want you guys to share with you is talking about Robinhood and Coinbase. So, what's going to be their position? Is this bullish for both of these exchanges? And does this maybe open up a whole new layer of customers? Listen in.
Bullish for a Coinbase, bullish for a Robinhood, not because they do it because people are going to buy it as ETFs instead. How do you think about the exchange universe?
Right. So we run a spot exchange at Cboe Digital. So from my perspective, there's a couple different points, right? You're going to be able to access Bitcoin through an ETF and not have to buy it natively. So you're going to have those participants enter the market. But I don't think that someone that already is trading Bitcoin is going to choose the ETF over the Bitcoin. They've already made that journey, right? But now you're going to have market makers. You're going to have larger institutions. You're going to have potentially pension funds, RIAs that are involved in this ecosystem. And so it's going to grow the demand and it's going to grow the participants. And they're going to need a place to hedge. Sometimes they hedge natively with just spot Bitcoin. Sometimes they might actually use derivatives. And so that's where we see the true growth from our perspective is in the ecosystem and the use cases beyond it.
Yeah, I think he's right. Obviously he being a competitor at the CBOE, but the point being is that there is an opportunity here for hedging and also getting into the rest of the ecosystem. Because remember, the first taste of the apple starts to make you think about what else in tech stocks, a good example. What else in crypto? And I think that will be the question mark. And those will not be available on traditional, exchanges. This is something you will end up on a Robinhood or a Coinbase for. So I think it only whets the appetite for the average investor and maybe even for traditional investors that are now starting to look at this from traditional finance and around the corner with what we might see on a ruling with Coinbase and the SEC. So still a lot to come. James Seyffert hits on maybe what does this look like in terms of how much is coming into the market. Listen in.
Do they start going out and raising capital and buying buying Bitcoin? How is this going to work actually in the marketplace?
Yeah, so a lot of them have already raised capital. So there is seed capital on the sidelines. We don't know exactly how much. So there is some seed capital. We know Bitwise has raised 200. Some people have labeled only 2.5 million or 10 million. But we've heard rumors of others that have billions of dollars waiting to invest in these things. So essentially, because of the way these are structured, they're only going to be allowed to do cash creation or redemption. So typically in ETF, you can actually put the underlying asset directly into the fund and then in return get shares of the actual ETF. Right now, the SEC is only allowing cash create. So the only thing that can go into this fund is cash, and then it's on the fund itself to buy the asset. So when all this money starts pouring in, now who knows how much it's going to be. Based on the rumors, it's going to be bigger than anything I was expecting. It's going to be buying of the underlying spot Bitcoin. So there's going to be all these market makers, traders, the Wall Street traders that you think of are going to be out there buying spot Bitcoin for these fund companies. It's unlikely that these funds, and I don't think it's possible for these funds to have been buying the underlying Bitcoin, right? As I mentioned, there is no ability to do the in-kind creation or redemption. So typical ETFs, like I said, you hand over the asset. So in this case, it would be Bitcoin, and in return, you get the shares of the ETF. In this case, the only way to get Bitcoin inside of these legal entities, these ETFs, is for cash to go in and then for Bitcoin to be bought. None of these funds, none of these documents have shown that these companies have bought Bitcoin through those funds. So any buying of Bitcoin is likely still to occur when these things ultimately list. I thought a lot of people were overhyping the amount of money that was going to come into the space, and it's looking like I might have been wrong on that, but I guess we'll find out in the next week or two. That said, the money hasn't been bought. The other flip side to this is, like I mentioned, Grayscale GBTC has 26 billion in assets. It's likely that they are going to see some outflows, some significant outflows, because people were using them for a long time. Some of them were buying GBTC solely to play what I was just talking about, that discount or premium, not necessarily trying to get long-term exposure to Bitcoin. So we'll likely see some outflows there, which will be net selling on Bitcoin.
All right, so a lot that James was breaking down there, but I think this is 2 points, is that there's much more on the sidelines than even the Bloomberg analysts that study these markets day in, day out expected. That's number one. Number two is the issue of a lot of people kind of saying, hey, Paul, this is already priced in. Bitcoin going to 47, maybe 50 is really what we're going to see here, and that's going to be kind of the end of the day. I'm in agreement with what Seyffert is talking about, only because, what we've already started to see, what now we understand from a cash create standpoint, and the fact that we are seeing a heat up. Because remember, everything up to this point has still been speculation that an ETF is going to approve. We're now on the last day before this is either going to happen or isn't going to happen, unless we get some wild, issue with the SEC where they push something for whatever reason. But the point being is that you've got all this potential seed capital sitting on the sideline that could be moving in very quickly. So to my thesis, back to what I was talking about before, is that in the past, I was kind of like, hey, this is probably going to see an initial bump, and then we would see kind of a level off and maybe a retrace. That's kind of my position had been. What I'm seeing now is a different appetite. And these different appetites are what I'm really measuring now as a potential for this being a much longer run. And it also depends on where the macro is, of course. but also will depend on what the traditional markets are going to be doing, because I think we will see some outflows coming from that as well. Balchunas hits on something else here that I thought was interesting that gets into a little bit about the premium of Bitcoin. Listen in.
Typical ETF like SPY might be 2 basis points here or there. It's almost right on it. Where do you expect these to land?
U.S. broker-dealers can't trade Bitcoin Cash inside their broker-dealer. Some can, most can't. And so you're going to have to hedge yourself with futures or trading at a premium, and then take that off. And I think that there's a lot of complexity there. So what I think, potentially, you could see 8% above fair value.
8%?
It'll be some crazy number.
That's a lot.
It's a big number, but let's see play out. Can't trade Bitcoin directly. You'd be offshore to do it. And you had trading futures in real time. Futures are trading at a premium to spot. I think that there's an equation there to be played out, understood.
All right, Eric's heart rate just spiked. I felt it. I'm sure you guys did too.
All right, so you can kind of see the markets kind of are looking at this in a very interesting way in terms of premium costs to be able to access this asset class. And I think that is something that will continue to surprise. You saw the two analysts there being Balchunas and talking with his colleagues about what this really would look like. And even they had not seen these kind of numbers before. So their anticipation of potentially an 8% premium here will be very interesting in terms of a market impact. I want to get into a few other things that also I think will continue to drive the narrative in 2024 toward crypto and possibly even Bitcoin, but I think also within other assets to be looking at. This coming in, of course, just in that X is going to be launching peer-to-peer payments in 2024. We've known this has been coming. Elon has been getting his money licenses across many states. He's been quietly doing this. And remember that X really initially, if you don't know the history of X, you should go back and look at X.com, which was originally PayPal. And the idea, remember, understanding that Elon was once PayPal along with his other investors, and he's always wanted to be a payment platform. And maybe that is really the hidden value of what X is trying to do. So if this actually becomes a deal, we're going to continue to see a societal shift in what we know as the monetary system. So a lot happening in the market. All right, so I want to jump to a tweet right here. This, of course, is Gareth Soloway. He's been on our show many times. And I'm going to play this clip for you guys to give you an idea of where Gareth thinks Bitcoin is going to go. Listen in.
I do think approval does come. I've said that since the very beginning. I wouldn't be seeing various commercials on CNBC. I wouldn't be seeing so much hubbub. You wouldn't have the BlackRock CEO going and making all these tours around talking up Bitcoin if it wasn't expected to be approval. Now, the bigger question remains is, where do we go? I continue to think that we could have an initial reaction, which would be up. And then the question is, do we then start to sell off? And I'm generally in that bias that I think this, again, you've seen an incredible run in Bitcoin. It's probably due for some sort of corrective move, maybe down to 38,000. That's for support. And then obviously down, maybe if it continues down to 30,000. Now,
wow, 30,000 on that. Okay. I don't know. I would have to disagree with Gareth, at least, from my opinion of where the market, there would have to be some major hits on the market or a lot of OGs, Bitcoiners taking profits. And I just don't see that happening this early in the bull cycle. And with what we're also seeing from a macro standpoint, the potential issue with the Fed, we're going to continue to see macro data starting to hit more this week. Maybe there is some retracement. I just don't know if we'd see a 30K retracement. But I'd love to know you guys' thoughts. Make sure and drop some comments down below if you think we will see a retracement or a bounce off of the, kind of sell the news approach, or do you think this is more of a long-term effort for where Bitcoin could guide the market of crypto in general? Further into this is Raul Powell. He says, basically, you're still able to front run all the flows over the next 24 months, and all you do is worry about what's priced in today, and if it's going to be a correct sharply after the ETF. So he's kind of just saying, hey, listen, don't worry about it. This is a long-run game. And we're in a period of time right now where the market has been in heavy pressure, including what has been a bear cycle in the crypto markets, along with other markets out there outside the Magnificent Seven. And I think everybody's looking at, hey, they're so worried about what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks as opposed to really what's going to happen in the next 2 years. I agree with Raul is that there's just so much opportunity here, especially around technology, whether it is AI implementation, what we'll see on the blockchain, the adoption of crypto in general, and more likely, more and more social acceptance of how blockchain is going to find its way into society. So a lot still moving in the positive going forward. Just a quick look at the chart right now. Bitcoin's still holding right here on the day before at 46.8. We might see that slightly above that. We'll see over the next 12 hours. But this is going to be an interesting day coming tomorrow. So make sure and stick around here. We're going to try to get to as many topics as we can. We'll probably we may even live stream tomorrow. I'm not sure, but make sure and subscribe because that's the best way to get additional content from us. And also, if you're not in our Diamond Circle, make sure and join right now. It's the best place for more podcasts and more of our own research. And if you guys want to catch me out there on X, it's @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.